No cap. If y'all see the other video, this video going up. You feel me? It's been your boy Deep, and we are watching New York sends all immigrants to the poor neighborhoods, bro. That's kind of fucked up because they coming from everywhere, bro. We can't stop them niggas, bro. You feel me? Let them be, bro. They don't even got houses and shit. Let them be. My bad, G. My bad. All right, but y'all like this video? Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you at the end. But surprise, maybe.
The fuck?
Never know. Never know.
Migrant crisis continues apace, and the latest data show that 3 of the 5 zip codes with the highest concentration of shelters rank among the city's poorest. These include places.
So it's controversially leaked that New York City shelters are found overwhelmingly in low-income neighborhoods. Residents of those neighborhoods say it's not fair, especially when rich parts of town like Soho don't have any shelters. But is this really a conspiracy to hurt needy New Yorkers, or is something else going on here?
Police scrambled to hold back the demonstrators. There was screaming and shouting and shoving. Several would be arrested.
Wow.
Hall Street in Clinton Hill has become a focal point of contention for neighbors who say the influx of more than 3,000 asylum seekers living at the site is overwhelming the neighborhood.
Damn.
Drove the people up and down all times of night, no curfew. If they're committing crimes right within themselves, we are fearful that it may spill out into the community.
When the migrants...
Hey, on me, bro. That's the one thing that sucks about it is because they don't have common sense, bro. It's at nighttime. They do some dumb shit. Get in trouble. Now everybody got to watch that. Wake up in the middle of the night like, what the hell? Just to find out it's just a person living in the streets. Crazy.
can't work and they're able-bodied and they're sitting around, what are they going to do? Well, many neighborhoods around the city are saying enough's enough. We can't put them up in our neighborhoods.
Demonstrators highlighted a range of concerns, from excess trash to loitering and a surge of homelessness under the BQE among migrants forced to leave the site after their 30-day stay expired.
Let me tell you something, New Yorkers. Never in my life have I had a problem that I did not see an ending to. I don't see an ending to this.
Wow. It might not end. It might not end, bruh. You only can do a big old chunk in history, bro. You can't do all of history. You can't change it all. You only can do a big ass chunk of it. Keep that in mind, bruh.
It's official! New York's low-income neighborhoods are where all of its shelters get placed. But what nobody's talking about is that even though this sounds incredibly controversial and incredibly unfair, 80% of the city's residents say they support right to shelter, just as long as their neighborhoods don't get the shelters first. And as it turns out, the city's wealthiest residents living in the richest neighborhoods will be the last New Yorkers to ever live near shelters, if the city even decides to build in those parts of town, because something very controversial has been happening ever since this crisis began. Because with busload after busload of asylum seekers arriving in New York from the southern border, New York City quickly ran out of room at its emergency shelters like the Roosevelt Hotel, forcing our leaders, who were surprised by the sheer number of people seeking a free place to stay, to find more emergency shelters as quickly as possible. Because
that's actually crazy. That man opened up his doors and said, "Come in." Wait, never mind. Just too many of y'all. Like, he says,
so would be against the laws many New Yorkers say they support, but fascinatingly, the relentless expansion of the asylum industrial complex and its massive shelters hasn't taken place in an evenly distributed manner, with the vast majority of emergency facilities now operating in areas of town that house middle-class and low-income residents, who are now wondering why their neighborhoods are changing while the rich live on the same quiet streets they've always lived on in neighborhoods.
hey. Oops. Yeah, I'm keeping this in. Oops.
Bruh.
I see y'all in the comments, bro. You gotta chill out, boy. Yeah. I hope you had a good day. Looking ass. Oh, that's funny.
Neighborhoods that do not show the signs of the out-of-control humanitarian crisis the city's laws mandate its support. But this brings up the real reason why many people are upset over these controversial revelations, asking questions that may have very uncomfortable answers. Like, why is it that the West Village and Soho have 0 shelters for asylum seekers? Why does Queens, the lowest income...
Because they must have got a lot of businesses and they don't want people around their businesses when they're asleep. That's tough.
borough have the most shelters? And most importantly, could the presence of shelters in some neighborhoods versus others split New Yorkers on how they feel regarding the city's decision to offer unlimited housing to the entire world? Well, as you're about to see, that may very well depend on where you live.
Wow.
So here we are in Midtown Manhattan, one of the city's first neighborhoods to experience a rapid build-out of the shelter system. And right here we have the Stewart Hotel, a former luxury hotel right across the street from Penn Station that now serves as a place for families. But although many of the initial shelters the city set up were in this part of town, after running out of room and having a few shelters get shut down for safety reasons, they turned their attention to other parts of town. And once they started building shelters in other neighborhoods, that's when a lot of this controversy started.
You telling me they bombarded this man's or female's, you feel me, place so bad to the point they shut the whole building down? Damn!
The 5 zip codes with the highest concentration of shelters rank among the city's poorest. These include places like Jamaica and Queens and East New York in Brooklyn.
So to understand why the placement of shelters for asylum seekers has fractured New Yorkers along income lines, we've got to look at just how many of them aren't in expensive parts of town and how many are in low-income neighborhoods. According to the leaked report on shelter locations, Long Island City contains 1 out of every 8 shelters, 23 in total, and in total the city operates 193 of such facilities. But it doesn't stop there. 3 out of the 5 zip codes in New York that have the lowest incomes also have most of the shelters as well. Areas like Jamaica in Queens and East New York in Brooklyn, where the median annual incomes are...
My bad for the pause. But I ain't gonna cap. I'm not my bad for the pause. I'm pausing every time. Stop playing. That's kind of crazy. That basically means they put all the shelters in the locations that there's no money, no businesses, really nothing really. So therefore, those people just have a place. Now they have to travel to get a job somewhere else, a little bit far. They don't have the security like really to watch their stuff. So it's all bad, bro. That's just bad, bro. If you think about it, that's terrible.
Around $37,000 a year. Whereas in the West Village, where the average household income is $250,000 a year, you will not find one single shelter. And the same goes for neighboring Soho, which also has 0 shelters and a similar high household income. On top of that, no plans to expand the shelter industrial complex to those neighborhoods that have no shelters in them were revealed as part of this leak, which means the city's richest neighborhoods may never see any shelters ever as long as this crisis continues. But if the
Duh. Like, what are you talking about? It's the people with the money, bro. They don't want to see them people right there. They don't want to see nothing right there. They don't even want to walk outside their house and see the environment trash. What are you talking about? They're not going to add those, ever.
Right to shelter is something that 80% of New Yorkers say they support. Why is it a big deal to have shelters in a given neighborhood?
Migrant shelter at 47 Hall Street in Clinton Hill has become a focal point of contention for neighbors who say the influx of more than 3,000 asylum seekers living at the site is overwhelming the neighborhood, from excess trash to loitering and a surge of homelessness among migrants forced to leave the site after their 30-day stay.
Okay, so it's important to understand that these shelters, they can hold anywhere from a few hundred people to thousands of people, depending on how big they are, like the Hall Street shelter in Clinton Hill, Brooklyn. And you've got almost 4,000 people living in a 1-block radius where nobody was living just a couple of years ago because it was all commercial and industrial property. And although neighbors in areas like this are reporting increased crime and unusable parks, that in and of itself is not necessarily a byproduct of the asylum crisis. Because after all, if you were to take 4,000 people who cannot work and have to stay in one location all day, and you put them there, what else would they really do other than hang out at the nearby park? And proponents say that crime goes up whenever population goes up and the police force stays the same size, which is also independent of whether or not people are here seeking asylum. And if you have more people using city resources, won't it be harder to take care of those resources? But what seems...
See? They put them all in a poor area just so they will do crime. The police can't do nothing about it because they don't have enough people. So therefore, now that whole area is just terrible. Now they rank it as the bottom, the poor, the ghetto. But they could easily switch it and change it by upping law enforcement or adding more buildings that the migrants can go into. They have so many commercial buildings over there. Come on, bruh. Come on, bruh.
Unfair to many residents in areas that now have shelters is that the rich haven't seen any such population increases in their neighborhoods. Their parks all look the same.
See? Everything looks the same because nothing changed because they're doing the same thing.
Their neighborhoods all feel the same, and their city resources aren't stretched to the limit. But the reason this seems unfair and weird to so many is because New York is run by politicians who claim that they're looking out for the little guy. Yet it seems to many that the little guy is burdened unfairly by shouldering the cost of policies that affect the entire city, but are localized where they live. While the rich, who also say that they support those policies, aren't doing their fair share to shoulder the burden, which has people asking, do our leaders understand how this is unfairly, in their minds, affecting people of lower incomes? And what are our leaders going to do about this to make it so that everyone does their part?
And they are not going to do anything. They're not going to do shit. They got a house in the rich side. They about to live in that house peacefully. The population didn't go up, therefore they're chilling. They don't care. My bad, G. Face ass.
What we have here is yet another case of a policy created and fought for by progressives. A policy towards migrants that demands they be sheltered, that hands them free food, all while taking up space in neighborhoods where the citizens were already economically hurting, already marginalized.
So this is a very
Okay, that's true.
very direct critique of what many people say are the problems with how this whole system is happening. But we've got to add something to it because we're not just looking at progressive policy. We're looking at a progressive policy that is now meeting with reality. And the idea that we're talking about here is that New York City should offer housing to the entire world. But the reality it's being faced with is limited resources, limited money, and limited places where people can stay. And proponents of how the city's handling this crisis say that that has a lot to do with what shelters are chosen and where they happen to be located. But as you're about to see, this looks and feels like unfairness to residents of neighborhoods that have shelters in them, especially when the rich have no such facilities in their backyards.
Crazy. They chilling. They big chilling. Everybody else is suffering. That's crazy.
So this here abandoned husk of a facility, it used to be an emergency shelter that was set up by the city. It's a former college, but the fire department took one look at this place and decided it was unsafe. That's why there's a vacate order on the front.
What did I say? They open the doors and say, hey, here you go, guys. Y'all can live here. You feel me? Just pay me a little bit or just pay y'all for free. Fireman said, shut it down. You're done. You're done, buddy. You're done. Unsafe.
Door that's about a year old at this point. And the interesting thing about this facility is it's not in a low-income neighborhood. It's actually right down the street from the other hotel in Midtown that is actively a shelter right now. In fact, the former entrance is right over here, and that right there, that is Madison Square Garden. And the reason this is important is because it reveals something about the whole shelter selection process that the city goes through when they find a building. So why was this building ever picked? Well, it's abandoned. It had no purpose, even though it's in an area of town where people have household incomes of around $160,000. And according to a City Hall spokesman, locations are chosen as shelters based on how quickly they can be converted and set up. And the first thing this means is not all abandoned buildings are created equal. Some might make better shelters than others. And in the case of this here building, they tried to make it a shelter and it failed, so it didn't work. But the other part of the equation here has to do with saving money. And this building's down the street from other shelters. If it had worked, it would have saved the city money because they've already got security personnel over here. They've already got deliveries from food catering companies. There are caseworkers who deal with asylum claims at various shelters in the area. Everything would be localized to an extent, which reveals that there is some cost savings when you have one shelter next to other shelters. If you want to set up a shelter in a neighborhood that has 0 shelters, all of the infrastructure to run that, all of the caseworkers, all of the food deliveries, everything, you need a new security team. You got to get it all into a new part of town where you don't have any of it before. That could mean that the first shelter in a given neighborhood is the most expensive, and if it is your goal to save money, you line them up one after another, after another, after another, because that's where you have everything set up to run these places. And from a financial standpoint, this makes a lot of sense. The first problem that you have is
that do make sense.
And the second problem you have is you need to save money while you're running it, which helps if it's near other buildings nobody wants. And the problem is that the city has been unable to find large swaths of buildings that nobody wants in expensive parts of town. And
come on, bro. You got commercial buildings, bro. Just use those buildings, bro, and y'all will be good. Y'all know y'all have the money for that, bro. Y'all have the personnel. Y'all have the security. Stop it. Y'all niggas just being lazy.
That explains why you have a lot of shelters, not just here in Midtown, which was decimated by the 2020 remote work revolution, but also over in Long Island City, because a lot of those mega shelters, they're in former buildings that were designated as office space, commercial space. One of them used to be a very large co-working facility. These were not places where you could have actually had apartments. They're not zoned for residential living, but they are places where you could set up an emergency facility. And just like in the case of these bankrupt hotels in Midtown that nobody wanted to stay in after 2020 and were falling into disrepair, the asylum crisis is the best thing to come along and save these industrial structures that now have no use case. But because these places are affordable, it makes it look like the city is actively engaging in income discrimination. They're not trying to spread the resources to care for asylum seekers evenly throughout the city, even though the city evenly says they all support these policies. And it looks like for that reason, reality will continue to dictate that shelters get set up near the shelters we already have, not in neighborhoods that don't have them yet, which is gonna make a lot of people upset because the asylum crisis doesn't show any signs of slowing down.
That basically is going to be straight like downhill for business wise and all that stuff, but just uphill for just problems. Crazy. Down. New York is low-key like a movie, so if you go down there, bro, if you travel, visit that, it's like a movie, bro. You're gonna see so many shit. It's crazy shit. I have a homie out there, man. That's the only thing I'm gonna say. He always used to be saying this like a movie, bro. Crazy.
So here we are in the neighborhood south of where that abandoned college and the first hotel we looked at are located. It's called Chelsea, and there are 3
abandoned college.
But if you look around,
that was a college. I thought that was just a building. That was a college? What are you talking about? Let's see.
A pretty historic part of town. It's also a very expensive part of town. Actually, according to the map, it looks like this neighborhood's only got 1 shelter, not 3. And the reason you won't find very many shelters here is because all of the real estate in this neighborhood has already been developed. There used to be old buildings and facilities here that nobody wanted, but those were all torn down to make way for luxury condos. And even though the city was able to put 3 shelters in the neighborhood north of here, if they wanted to add another one to this neighborhood, I'm not sure where they would find the space for it. Their only conceivable option would be to call this phone number right here on the side of this building and find out a way to buy this empty lot over here where they could probably construct something, but they'd have to do that from scratch. It would be very expensive. And we've learned that the city picks and chooses which buildings become shelters based on how quickly they can be set up, which means they're going to need a pre-existing structure, not an empty lot, but there aren't any more pre-existing structures here. But as it turns out, this has been a problem with how the city has run its homeless shelters even before the asylum crisis started, as the city's homeless shelters were predominantly located in low-income neighborhoods as well. And even though former progressive mayors were aware of this problem and said they had solutions on the table to deal with it, to spread the shelters around more evenly, that never ended up happening. And as you can tell, it still hasn't ended up happening, because if it had, we wouldn't be having this discussion today about why all of the city's asylum shelters aren't located where the rich live. But as you're about to see, this is something many New Yorkers, including those who live in areas that they think have too many shelters, cannot seem to wrap their minds around.
If they're committing crimes right within themselves, we are fearful that it may spill out into the community.
Despite their grievances, residents are not calling for the shelter to close, but for the city to reduce the number of migrants housed at the shelter.
Take some of the migrants and spread them across Brooklyn. Every area in Brooklyn should be able to hold their fair share of migrants.
So as you can see here, the protesters at
I ain't gonna lie to you. The rich people ain't gonna do shit. They ain't gonna do shit. They ain't gonna try to help y'all niggas. Only y'all have to go talk to the people who's doing the real estate. All that. In the middle level. In the middle level, bro. The rich people ain't gonna do shit. They living life. I bet you they just have a security watching their doors. They're not even at the house. Stop playing. That's just a waste of time, bro. Don't even try to protest. Just go make it happen your damn self.
at the Hall Street shelter, they have no idea why that location was selected, why other locations weren't selected. They have no idea the economics behind why that shelter is as large as it is and why other parts of town are shelterless for the most part. But even though the protesters want every single neighborhood in Brooklyn to have its fair share of shelters, their demands are fascinating because the demand they're making on the city just isn't realistic. They want every single neighborhood to have the exact same number of shelters. Yet the city has no ability to put shelters in places where there aren't buildings that are for sale or for rent. And observers say that these and many other New Yorkers are upset because they support policies that are somewhat unrealistic, housing the entire world for as long as it might want to come and stay here for 30 days, while at the exact same time not recognizing the infrastructure commitment that has to be there in advance for such a request to be carried out the same way in every single neighborhood. And that's what's got people so riled up. A policy they support has impacted their neighborhood in a way that they do not support. Yet they see other neighborhoods like this one that we're in right now that look and remain unscathed as far as they're concerned. And the thing that they really are alarmed about is that the city's new plans to build new shelters don't include places like this where there are no buildings. Is that why New Yorkers have a problem with the distribution of shelters right now? Is it fair for New Yorkers to say that they support right to shelter, but then be upset when right to shelter actually happens and when it's carried out? And the big question is, if we're going to have right to shelter, the first shelter has to go somewhere. How could you be upset if that's your neighborhood? Eventually, there may be shelters in every single part.
I want to be upset. I'd be more or less like, damn, bro, y'all better have it under control. Then it's going to leak out into the actual neighborhood and it's going to mess up the neighborhood, bro. It's crazy. That's like the only problem they have, and that's like what they have to think about, bro. Is all those people going to leak out into the actual neighborhood they have right there? They're just in a building, bro. Come on now.
Part of town, but we don't know that yet. What do you think's going on here? Do you think people are right to feel it the way that they do? How do you feel? Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.
Hey man, say man, hey, you made it this far in the video. Thank y'all, man. It's crazy what they're doing. I want to see what they're actually gonna do. I think they're gonna open, like, they're gonna make a little bit more shelters down there, but then they're really not gonna do shit. They're not gonna do nothing really, because then the immigrants is just gonna keep constantly coming in because they're gonna see new stuff. So they just gotta thug it out, bro. That's the only thing I can say. Just open buildings. They have commercial buildings. Open those shits up. Let them use them. Move y'all commercial buildings somewhere else, bro. At this point. Other than that, it's been your boy Deep. I'll definitely catch y'all in the next video. Peace. Looking at it. Looking at.